Hi, and welcome to this presentation on pronouns. This section is in your book beginning on page 108. All right, so a couple of things about pronouns. Pronouns are sometimes we think we can hear what word we need to use, and sometimes our ear is not always trained correctly. So in looking at this, there's 4 sentences here, and all of these are incorrect. And it may be how we speak. So him and me were assigned to the project. Mary and him came to the meeting together. Have you and her had a vacation? Usually David and me work together. All of those are incorrect. And they may sound right to our ear, but again, they're incorrect. And it says the trick down at the bottom is to try each pronoun separately with the verb. And that's what we're going to learn how to do through this presentation. And so just even in looking at this first sentence, what we do is we take each of these separately and we look at them with the verb. So if we know what our verb here is were assigned. Okay, now it's a little tricky because were is used when we have more than one. It's a plural verb, and what we want instead is a singular verb. So what we're going to do is change this into was. So we're going to start with him first, and we're going to change it and ask ourselves if this makes sense. Him was assigned to the project. That doesn't make sense, right? And so then we test the other option, which is he, and we ask ourselves, he was assigned. That makes more sense. So it should say he and, now we need to take a look at me. Me was assigned, doesn't make sense. Change that to the other option, which is I was assigned. So this sentence should actually say, he and I were assigned to the project. Second example, Mary is fine because it's not a pronoun. Him is the one we need to look at. We're going to test it. Our verb is came, so does it make sense to say him came to the meeting? And we can say no, that doesn't sound right to our ear. What does make sense though is that he came, and so this sentence would change to say Mary and he came to the meeting. And again, it may not sound right to our ear, but grammatically it is correct to say Mary and he came to the meeting. Number 3 is a question. So have you and her had a vacation? So you had a vacation does make sense. How about her had a vacation? Doesn't make sense. So this sentence should actually say, have you and she had a vacation? Then the last example, usually David and me work together. Me work doesn't make sense, but I work does. So we change that to say, usually David and I work together. And again, all you're doing is taking the pronoun and putting it with the verb in that sentence and changing it if it doesn't make sense. Here are some more examples. The caller was I. That is correct. If you reverse that sentence, it would say I was the caller, not me was the caller. Number 2, was the chairman he? To answer that question, you'd say he was the chairman, not him was the chairman. So he is correct. And these are inverted sentences. I'll kind of make that claim. Most of us probably don't use, they're passive, and so it's best to write more actively, but sometimes these sentences do find their way into our papers, and so we want to make sure we have the right pronouns. Number 3, the receptionist who took the message was she, and you would reverse that to say she took the message. The new students are she and I. And again, this one is hard because we would never say I are, but again, are is used for plural, and so we would say I am the new student. The graduates were they were the graduates. The judges should have been we, which really sounds goofy. Most of us would probably say the judges should have been us, but we is actually correct. If you would reverse that, it would say we should have been the judges. And again, these are inverted sentences. They're not great sentences, but it does illustrate another way that you can use pronouns. If they're coming at the end of the sentence, you just kind of reverse it to make sure that the sentence would say something, would be correct if we reversed it to put the pronoun at the beginning. All right, now we get into objective case. And again, this is the same idea. What we're going to do is take the verb and and see which one makes sense. So she hastily called Tom and I, or Tom and me. So we're going to pretend like Tom and the and just doesn't exist. So she hastily called I, or she hastily called me. The one that fits and ends that sentence the best is actually the word me. So she hastily called Tim and me. I thanked she, or I thanked her. Her makes the most sense. Now we're going to pretend as if the she and the her don't exist, and we're going to just look at I thanked he, or I thanked him. I thanked him makes sense, so I thanked her and him. Maureen invited her sister and we, or Maureen invited her sister and us. So to test that, we would pretend as if her sister and the and don't exist. So Maureen invited we, or Marie invited us, and the answer is yes. Or us, sorry. So Maureen invited her sister and us. Number 4, Walter gave the essay to his sister and he, or him. Again, we pretend as if his sister and doesn't exist. So Walter gave the essay to he, or Walter gave the essay to him, and him is the correct answer. So it would say Walter gave the essay to his sister and him. And again, you just try each pronoun separately. You pretend as if the and his sister, or the and her sister just don't exist. And so you test it with the verb. In terms of possessive cases, so pronouns can be possessive, and if they're possessive, they are showing ownership. One thing to remember is that possessive nouns use apostrophes, possessive pronouns do not. So we have John's report and we have his report. We would never use an apostrophe after the S in his. The workers' lunch, if we were going to use a pronoun, it would just say their lunch. So again, no pronouns. Pronouns do not get apostrophes. The next little note says possessive case pronouns or nouns are used in front of a gerund. And what a gerund is it's an ing word. So down here we see his playing of the violin has improved. Playing is considered a gerund. So because it's an ing and it's a possessive, well, we're going to use the possessive case, which is the pronoun his. And you'll see those pronouns and their options as to if they're possessive or objective or subjective in the book. So if you go and look at those pages in the textbook, you'll find that. The dentist objected to my eating candy. Again, this is an ing, it's a gerund, so it's a verb, eat. Ing added to it makes it a gerund. We use a possessive pronoun in front of that, so my is possessive. The third example, speaking. Speaking, again, here is used as a verbal, or as a gerund, so it's a verb, speak, with an ing attached to it, so we have a gerund, speaking. Use a possessive pronoun in front of it. Your is possessive, so you're speaking to the instructor, arouse suspicion. Here we have another, arriving is your gerund. We use the word her because it's possessive, so her arriving late to class became a problem. Now the word that we would use in front of this is maybe she arriving late to class became a problem. And in this case, or her arriving to class. And in this case, we want to use the her because it's possessive. In this option up here, it's not you speaking to the instructor aroused suspicion, but you're speaking. And so we're using the possessive case, specifically because this is what's called a gerund, a verb with an ing attached. More with possessive. Possessive pronouns, when used as a comparison, you kind of have to pretend something is on the other side of that. And so if we look at that first example, it says the captain played better than he. That is correct. And how we know that is because we finish it on the other side. So the captain played better than he played. And it's a comparison. Are you as smart as she is? He is nicer than me. He is nicer to Matt than to me. He is nicer to Matt than I. So there's two different options because it means two different things. He is nicer to Matt than he is to me. So it means he's nicer to Matt than me. Here it's saying that Matt is just nicer than I am. If I had to compare myself to Matt, Matt's nicer than I am. And so depending on which pronoun you're using can change the meaning of the sentence. When a pronoun is used next to a noun that it refers to in an apposition, omit the noun to decide on the correct pronoun. And again, this is not something that I would suggest. Usually you would not use a pronoun in front of what you're referring to. So in this case, it says we or us mechanics service our own vehicles. It would say we mechanics service our own vehicles. And the way to test that is to get rid of mechanics. The second example, the instructor greeted us, new students. And again, you would use the way to test that would be just to get rid of new students. So the instructor greeted us, and that would give you the correct option there. You want to avoid reflexive pronouns if another pronoun form is suitable. So Samson gave the best grade to my friend and me. My boss, my assistant, and I will go to the seminar. And again, myself, yourself, himself, and herself, I would avoid if possible. So if you can use something else, avoid the reflexive, the myself, himself, and yourself. And that's the end of this presentation on pronouns. You will see a quick quiz that you'll find in the assignments section of this week's content. Thank you.